There's been anger from contaminated NHS blood campaigners that David Cameron has been so quick to order inquiries into phone hacking. This is what the Prime Minister said about launching such probes into phone hacking.
We do need to have an inquiry, possibly inquiries into what has happened. Let us be clear, we are no longer talking here about politicians and celebrities. We're talking about murder victims, potentially terrorist victims, having their phones hacked into. It is absolutely disgusting what has taken place.
Today, the campaign group Tainted Blood has expressed its anger and disbelief that Mr Cameron was so quick to launch these inquiries. They say there are more than 2,000 victims of contaminated blood brought in by the NHS from the United States in the 70s and 80s, and their calls for a government inquiry has been shunned for decades. One of those is Colette Wintle from Worcester, who contracted hepatitis B and C, as well as being exposed to CJD, better known as mad cow's disease, and joins me in the studio now. Colette, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Let's get this out of the way straight away. Lots of people may say this is a bit of a tenuous link. Is it?
Not at all. I think that, David Cameron's been very quick to take the moral high ground here. And, this has been a terrible thing that has happened. And I think people should be held to account for what has happened, and it's right to investigate that. What I find stunning is that whilst that has been said, that this government and previous governments have ignored corruption and appalling acts within the NHS system, the Department of Health, that the knowledge has been there that 2,000 people lost their lives as a direct result of being given contaminated NHS blood sourced from prisons in America. The facts were known in the medical profession. Nothing's been done about it. We have asked for years for a public inquiry. There has never been a scandal on this scale in the history of the NHS, and everything else seems to be given a higher credence in terms of inquiries. We have been there as victims. I myself had a meeting with the Health Minister last week, and I told her how disgusted I was that the review had failed to help people that come out this year, that the inquiry we've asked for, they cannot justify why they will not give us a meeting. And, it's very nice, that David Cameron's coming over all concerned, but I think he ought to be doing another review of how they've handled this since they came into power from last year. They've had a whole year to deal with this, and on moral grounds alone, this is appalling. The British public need to know about it.
Is it the fact that this sort of story broke a week or so ago? I know it's been around a while, but it really came to the forefront a week or so ago, and within days the Prime Minister is saying we must have an inquiry, and as far as you're concerned, within many years, he's known what he's supposed to do and what you want him to do, and hasn't done anything. So it's the speed of this, really.
It's the speed of it, because we have been crying out as a community. We've suffered terrible financial hardship. We've suffered phenomenal disease amongst the community. And I cannot believe that in his own backyard, 2,000 people have lost, 2,000 British victims have lost their lives, and he cannot see the reason why a public inquiry should occur. They have battled with us for years, and I cannot understand why human life is less important than finding out who's behind phone hacking.
There was the independent inquiry, of course. Lord Archer's report criticised the government's response and recommended it raised compensation levels for victims. Was there ever an official response from Whitehall about that?
Well, actually, interesting, last year we actually won a High Court decision, which was an historic one. It was a judicial review, which the government were unable to contest, where the government used Ireland as the recommendation from Lord Archer was to follow that model because it was a perfect model. The government's reasons behind it were that things were different there, and in fact the judicial review proved that that was not the case, and that removed the anomaly that they were putting up as an excuse not to actually come forward and say, we recognise this was wrong, it shouldn't have happened, and we will now compensate people for the terrible harm and damage on moral grounds. They have stepped away from that, and what they've done is they put forward a review that doesn't address any of the issues that have affected this particular group of patients. And the public inquiry that we want would expose once and for all what the government knew, how long they knew it, and what they are covering up. And that is the underhand issue here. They're talking about underhand behaviour with these newspapers and the phone hacking, but what's going on in terms of this NHS blood scandal is majorly underhand, corrupt, and actually is murder.
What now? Is there any point in carrying on?
Of course, because whilst those of us who remain alive and have breath in our body are able to, we will never allow any government to forget this
Is your
human
life
tragedy.
under threat?
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yes.
Because you have this illness.
Yes.
You are constantly
Yes.
having to take medicines, presumably, to...
Well, I'm in the final stages of liver disease. I'm actually on high alert for cancer now, and I will require a transplant if I hope to have an extension of my life. That's where I'm at now, and that's been caused entirely by my NHS treatment over a period of actually 10 years during the 70s and 80s.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Nice to talk to you. Colette Wintle from Worcester, who's contracted hepatitis B and C, as well as being exposed to the CJD when she was given contaminated blood imported from America in the 70s and 80s. We did invite the Minister of Public Health, Anne Milton, to come on the programme tonight, but the Department of Health turned down a request. Spokeswoman told us a review has already taken place into the NHS contaminated blood, which last year promised more government support for the victims, and compensation levels were significantly increased. The spokeswoman wouldn't be drawn, though, on why there hasn't been an official government inquiry into what happened in the 70s and 80s within the NHS, and wouldn't comment on whether one will be held in the future. BBC Hereford and Worcester.